So, everyone
Let's
might
inspect,
remember.
interpret, and even speculate about it.
Everyone, we really gotta stop that, dude. Everyone might remember when I did a quick review, and Bradley was like, "Oh, come back here in a couple weeks for the real review from a real fan who will love this movie." So, Bradley? Why don't you tell us how much you loved It Chapter Two?
Oh, wait, wait,
Oh,
wait,
whoa,
wait.
whoa, whoa, whoa.
I have not seen It Chapter 2,
Oh,
and I'm reading the book, so should I dip out?
You should dip out for a little bit, I guess.
Alright, I'm
this will be a fast one, Tyler. I
It's
promise.
gonna
I'm
be
gonna
like
go
it's gonna be like 5 to 10 minutes, so you can just chill out for a little bit.
I'm gonna go work on my space vegetables.
Do it. I don't know why you would have them on Earth, but it's cool.
Oh, trying new things.
All right, let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay, so I'm gonna say it right off the bat. It Chapter 2. While I enjoyed it just because I'm a fan of the franchise, it is a bad movie.
Shit,
Um,
dog.
it is a very high budget, but frankly, I think poorly made movie. And I think the biggest weakness is the pacing of it. Like, I I feel like in this movie, I don't feel like there's any kind of artistic transition between scenes, if that makes sense. I feel like every plot point in this movie, every scene is like they're just checking something off on a list, like, oh, we have to do this part of the story, and then we have to do this part of the story.
And
And
that gets really bad in the middle.
yeah, and I feel like we, compared to the original, I guess, movie adaptation, I don't think we did a very good job at like transitioning these characters to adults and reintroducing them. And like, I'm not gonna say it can't be done, because like this is, both adaptations are very different from the book, where the book from the start, it is both the children half of the story and the adult half of the story. And I think Stephen King chooses very good moments to swap between the two. Both of the movie adaptations do the child half and then the adult half. um, I just think the 1990 version had a much more graceful transition to the adult half, and I'm not even saying that out of nostalgia, because I watched it for the first time as like a 20-year-old. So I
Yeah.
hope I have some credit there for
Some
that.
non nostalgia goggles. Very
Yeah.
important.
Um, I'm trying. I want to try to focus on things that maybe this adaptation did better than the 1990 version. I know, at the very least, I think they chose better actors for all the adults.
The
in this
casting felt really good.
The casting felt really good, but casting can only do so much for the script. um, One thing I did kind of want to talk about, uh, Willer got to talk a lot about Richie and his hate of him, and I actually got some really interesting stuff to say about it. Um, because a lot of stuff you talked about, I'm gonna agree with you on some points.
just
Um,
I just was remembering Pennywise is not a queer ally.
Guys, I found a really weird review, and it was this stuff like it was like it was like days after the movie came out, and it was like, everyone, like, we've seen that since It 2017, Pennywise has become something of a gay icon, but in the first few minutes of It 2019, we dispel any notion that Pennywise could be a queer ally.
And I'm just like, since when? I guess I don't have an eye for it, but
Yeah,
interesting analysis.
it
Sorry
was a
for
ve-
sorry
yeah.
for interrupting, but please do tell
No,
us
that
about
was like
Richie.
the most entertaining review I've ever read. But
So bizarre.
with Richie, I remember a lot of stuff you said was like stuff about how, he's not a person that can like ever really be serious. He has like jokes at a lot of really uncalled for moments, and a lot of his jokes end up not even being that funny to the characters in the movie, if not the people in the real life movie audience. Though
Hmm.
I do think generally people do laugh at his jokes.
Yeah, he definitely had some good ones, and I feel like that they've been reviewed pretty
Yeah,
positively. For me, they were very tension breaking all the time.
yeah. And I kind of kept those things you said in mind going into the movie, because I actually really loved Richie in the 2017 version. Um, and keeping those things you said in mind, I think the movie has like some really good like a really good approach to Richie, and I think the movie itself actually agrees with you about Richie himself. Um, because characters said a lot of the same things you said about Richie, where there's at least one moment in the movie where he makes a joke during like a really bad moment, and people are like, "Fucking serious? Like, are you serious?"
But
Um,
even the "Are you serious" is kind of played for laughs, and I wish that it
and
was a little bit more critical.
even then, if you don't think he's funny, the movie reinforces this by the fact that he he's a successful comedian, but he doesn't write any of his own jokes.
Yeah.
And I think the movie is kind of reinforcing the fact that this is a man that he uses humor as a coping mechanism, even if he isn't necessarily good at it. Um, and I think at the end of the movie, like throughout the entire movie, anytime something horror filled is happening, he's cracking these jokes. And I think very skillfully, the one moment that he does not crack jokes is at the end of the movie where he's finally letting himself grieve over his
Okay.
lost friend. Um, so I had some fun moments with Richie, and I feel like I wouldn't have got those moments if I didn't hear your criticism of the character. Um,
How did you
so
feel about like what I consider kind of a forced plot line that didn't really have any roots in the original movie, as far as I could tell, where Richie was in love with Eddie all along, and it's like it came out of nowhere in my eyes.
yeah, and this is like I'm like this clearly was not set up in the 2017 version at all, and like I won't say that every movie adaptation is going to have to be exactly the same as the source material, but I do think maybe I think the question I asked myself coming out is like, did we need this, and why do we need it?
It honestly felt like gay representation to get like ticket sales. You know, like it didn't feel like it was good representation because there's nothing to do with it about in the plot. It just comes in at the end where it's like, oh, by the way, also this. Are you feeling emotional about it? Yes, yes. And it's like
Because like
if it was set up, I wouldn't have minded at all. Like if it was also different from the source material, if they also put some good hints in chapter one.
because like I've always been a really big fan of like gay representation. For example, like in I think Steven Universe was kind of like it was one of the first cartoons to openly show that kind of relationship, and I think it's doing a really good job at making the kids who watch it maybe more accepting of that type of thing. And I think the key difference between that and this is that those characters were originally written that way, and because they were originally written that day, they were originally written that way rather. There's less of a notion that maybe they were written that way just to get sympathy points or
Yeah.
sell tickets. Like I feel like if a character is rewritten to be something they're not, I'm more likely to think that the writers aren't being sincere about it.
Yeah, and you can go many ways with this, but I've looked online. No one's really latched onto this. I feel like this felt flat on everybody, as far as I saw.
If nothing else, I do think that introducing that element gave us a bigger focus on these two characters than we ever got in the 1990s adaptation, which I mean, I'll always take that because the 1990s adaptation, while we do get to look at everybody, it focuses much more heavily on Bill, Ben, and Bev, which I mean are like my favorites anyway.
They're great in this one. I
Yeah,
really like those three. Um, Aside from the fact that Bill just ends up like cheating on his wife, and he also doesn't get Bev, and just like, oh well, shit
yeah.
happens.
Um, Bill is quite the boy. He is still my favorite character, and
James McAvoy. Everyone talks about Bill Hader. James McAvoy effortlessly reverting back into stuttering when he gets into dairy. That's good shit. I thought he
that's the
stole the
thing.
show.
Like both him and the child actor who played Bill, and I'm so sorry for not remembering your name if you're listening. um, like I think, holy shit, like that would be so intimidating. I think to have to play a character with like selective stuttering,
And it's
but
so good.
they executed it so
Yeah.
well, and like this was just way better casting for Bill than the 1990s version had. Like, holy shit. And I really loved Bill's climactic moment in this movie, where we see him with like the illusion of Georgie and the illusion of his younger self. And, you know, he has to finally tell himself that no, like it wasn't my fault. But then we're also introduced to something that we have never heard from Bill before, that maybe he wasn't actually sick that day. Maybe he just didn't want to play with his brother.
See, I always thought that was like obviously the point. Is that not in the originals?
No.
Oh,
And
really?
I feel like that's something like it was in the book, obviously, but
Okay.
it
Yeah.
I don't
Okay.
I don't think they ever vocalized that in the 1990s version. And I feel like I feel like that is a huge, huge element. Like that complicates the situation so much more for Bill's mind, I think.
See, in my mind, with how much grief he had, I was just like, yeah, obviously, that was what happened. So yeah, I'm glad that they at least confirm it if there was any suspicions.
Um, it's a very different setup for this moment than the 1990s adaptation, because the 1990s adaptation doesn't have the younger Bill there. He basically confronts Georgie in the sewer, and Georgie's like, you know, you let me die, all this stuff. And one of my favorite like lines in movie history, and it might just be the execution of it, but he like looks the fake Georgie in the eye and he's like, you are not Georgie. Georgie is dead, and it is not my fault.
Yeah, that's really good.
And I've always loved it, and I feel like that was a really short but impactful scene for me in the 1990s version. And I feel like while it's very different in this version, I think we get much more emphasis put on it. So I was really grateful for that.
Last thing I would like to bring up is how did you feel about Eddie? Because Eddie was my favorite character, but then he just becomes a bumblefuck in this movie. Um, and he kind of does the Richie thing, where it's like if it's not Richie breaking the tension, it's Eddie.
So,
I was just
like, the way you described like Richie when we last talked about this movie is in a way the way I feel about Eddie, where I'm just like, I can this guy fucking shut up, like, and like
it's the scene where he gets stabbed in the face is the most fucking awkward thing.
I fucked your mom.
And then he's just like, why are you still wearing a mullet, idiot? And then it's like, what? Okay, just the scene where he's with his mom in the basement. By the way, that wasn't his actual mom? They never address it, right?
No, it was
But then
no.
he's down there and he's choking the leper, and then the leper throws up on him, and they play a song that I can't quite remember what song it was, but it just did not fit. I think that was the exact moment where I was like, this movie could have been cool.
And I kind of had this thought where, especially during the scary moments in this movie, where
Quote
I
unquote.
feel like the 1990s adaptation, the scares they face as adults are much more tailored to their individual characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like something that would be traumatic to them, whereas in this, it's just, oh,
Spooky.
monster is gonna hurt you.
Big toy with an axe. Big the stand in the freezer though. That's pretty creepy. But
Yeah, holy shit.
but they're also cracking jokes during it, so
Yeah,
you know.
it's not that sad for them. So, overall, like I'm a huge fan of the franchise. And you know what? Okay, one more thing I want to talk about. Very into the movie. I feel like the 2017 and 2019 are much more into the image of Pennywise rather than it, the creature. They really love the clown because I think that's what's going to sell merchandise, and so they show a lot less of like the otherworldly creature that Pennywise actually is.
Are you
And
saying in the old ones or the new ones?
in the new ones,
Oh, interesting.
like in his dying moments, like he's still like just this little baby clown, when in reality he's like this otherworldly eldritch horror.
I thought like in 2017 too, when Pennywise opens his mouth in that way that he does, for me that really sells it. And you see the deadlights in there, like I think that looks really cool. I don't really remember what he transforms to in the old ones. I just remember like an actual spider kind of thing.
He was like this giant spider alien, and it looks really shitty because 1990. But I don't know. I enjoyed it. Anyway, I love the It franchise. I don't, man. Okay, I know we told Tyler it'd be like 5 to 10 minutes, so I don't want to go into my whole spiel. But
Mini spiel.
I think that Stephen King is an exclusively better Lovecraft. I bought a collection of Lovecraft's books, and I read a lot of them. And both Stephen King and Lovecraft often do cosmic horror. In fact, the Lovecraft probably invented cosmic horror. But I think a key difference is that, like, Lovecraft he was not a very anthrocentric person. He was very in the, like, humans are nothing, they're worthless, and you like. I think he was the kind of militant atheist that even other atheists are like, Jesus Christ, like, shut up. And so, because he didn't really view any value in humans, all of his stories have no human element to them. There's nothing really in them that's going to change you as a person, and there's no real morals in the story. But he does have really cool ideas, really cool creatures, and just really foreign horror elements. And I feel like Stephen King gets those same things, these really cool these cool ideas and these just really alien type of horrors, but it's character centric. He focuses on people, and I think that makes him a better Lovecraft.
That's a good spiel.
That's my short version of that rant. So you're welcome, everybody.
I'm sure the Lovecraft fans are just dying to find you.
Yeah, I'll be waiting for a bomb in my mailbox.
Or an Eldritch Horror. All right. That's it for Take It, You Worm.
Take it.
Take it.